Our next speaker will leave us with little doubt that we are in the right place this morning. Joe Jordan is a true believer in what we do. He started in our business in 1974, and in his first year, he was named Rookie of the Year and qualified for MDRT. He went on to a superstar career. He guided Payne Weber to the #1 position in annuity sales in just 2 years. As National Sales Manager for annuity sales at MetLife, he achieved even more. Sales grew from $800 million to $3 billion. Currently, he is Senior Vice President of Marketing and Sales for MetLife Enterprise, where he is responsible for marketing and sales of all insurance products. Get ready to say wow and welcome Joe Jordan.
I want to thank you for letting me be the opening speaker at this year's $1 Million Roundtable, because it helps me to fulfill my mission and purpose in life, and that is to seek out venues to tell people who are in the life insurance business something that you seldom hear but that you richly deserve, and that is that you live a life of significance. And let's look at the facts. You sell intrinsic value. Guarantees have intrinsic values. Now, it wasn't very popular, was it, to be selling guarantees back in 1999 when the stock market was screaming? But it was important. Just as it wasn't very popular to be selling investments back in 2001 when the stock market was crashing, but it was important. You see, the difference between you and some of the people who criticize you is the fact that you always talk to people about things that are important and just not popular. It's also important to note that intrinsic value is not measured by how much money you make, but by the size of the problem that you can solve. And you tell me another profession that solves problems bigger than this. You protect the innocent when someone dies prematurely so that people have peace of mind. You provide people with a worry-free retirement with an income they can't outlive so that they can maintain their independence. You protect their assets when they get sick, and you provide legacy, that's where it is, legacy when they die. And you tell me if that's not a life of significance. You freeze up here, you know, it gets hard. It's also important to note that the right brain buys and the left brain justifies. See, the right brain is the emotional part of the brain. That's the part where people make commitments. The left part is only the part where the analytical end is. And ladies and gentlemen, I think that we have allowed ourselves to be seduced in the past decade by a raging bull market, by advances in technologies and illustrations, the acquisition of new products and services, that in our quest to be like everyone else, we have become just like everyone else, marginalized by the commodity-type products that we sell. And today is the day that we recapture our soul to sell the products that are important and just not popular. You see, I get kind of worked up over this. That's because I have a confession to make. You see, I happen to be a recovering left-brain analytic. And you know what? I think some of you need to become that too. See, when I was selling, I was very much driven by a success model. And you know what that made me do? Every time I showed a proposal, I would ask people, what do you think about this? Don't ask people what they think about things. Ask them how they feel about it. When you're asking people to think, you're communicating with them. When you're asking people to feel, you're connecting with them. When you're asking people to think, you're looking for a decision. When you're asking people to feel, you're looking for a commitment. When you're asking people to think, you're dealing with their net worth. When you're asking people to feel, you're dealing with their self-worth. Dr. Tony Coppola has it right. He's a famous sociologist who tells us that humanistic sociology has got it all wrong. He says that science thinks that the essence of self is something that needs to be discovered through introspection. The essence of self is not something that needs to be discovered through introspection. It needs to be created by what you think the future will be. The only way that people create self, meaning, purpose, and commitment in life is to figure out what their future will be. The future determines who we are. See, the old Hebrew Bible had it right. It says that when the old men stop dreaming dreams and the young men lose their vision, the people perish. And when you show someone a plan, you help those people envision what their future can be. The products that you sell help to guarantee that future. In short, you give meaning and purpose in people's lives, and tell me that that's not a life of significance. Well, if we do all this neat stuff, what's wrong? Why is the business so tough? A lot of it happens to be down to our selling system. See, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of the selling systems that we have adopted anticipate the idea of motivated buyers. Ladies and gentlemen, most people, healthy, normal, healthy human beings, are not motivated to buy the important stuff we sell. Why? Because they don't sit around and think about their death and dismemberment every 5 minutes. If we did, we'd be a drag to be around. Why get out of bed if I'm going to die? So as a result of the fact that people are in denial, of the fact that they could die or get disabled, and you foist yourselves upon them, or worse yet, you don't really tell the people what you do for a living, they don't trust your motives. And we have to deal with that up front to make certain that people understand that you understand their denial. Let me tell you an approach that I recently saw that appeals to me. Mr. Johnson, I used to think seeing people was an opportunity for me. But now I see it as more of a responsibility, because I know that without me or someone like me, most people don't take the time to put together the programs that protect the people who depend upon them. I speak for the wife, for the children, for the employees, and the business partner who have no say in the matter. I'm their advocate. How does that sound? I could say that all day long, because you could be on your toes and not your heels. You see, ladies and gentlemen, this business is not about you, and it's not about he or she you happen to be speaking to. It happens to be about them, the innocents who are afflicted by the decisions or non-decisions that are made. But you know, ladies and gentlemen, we have some critics. They're called beneficiaries. Do you know that the average person in the United States is insured up to only 2.5 times his income? It begs the question, how long do you expect to be dead? Contrast that with the World Trade Center debacles, where wrongful death suits came up to 20 to 30 times the amount that the people had made. You must start selling the coverages that people need, where beneficiaries don't just survive, but they thrive. Think of how you will feel, or better still, how the community will feel about you when you start delivering death claims that are 10 and 20 times the amount of income. That is what your sacred charge, and that's what living a life of significance is all about. Now, some people ask me, how big is this market? Well, it's pretty big. And part of my job at MetLife is to do research, and I've been given permission to expose you to some pretty proprietary stuff. This is top secret stuff, so I don't want you to spread it around. It's so top secret that we happen to call it Joe's Interesting and Amazing Stuff. There it is. Curious and shocking facts that most people don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, after spending an enormous amount of money and a tremendous amount of time, we have uncovered the fact that everyone dies. Yes, it's true, and it's great when you're with the eggheads in the home office. They say, how many people? Everybody. That's good. They like that. The other thing that we uncovered after doing a lot of research and spending a lot of money, we find out that people are beginning to live longer. Have you noticed there's a lot of old people floating around here? Think about the impact. Term insurance, for example. Only 2% of term insurance is enforced in the United States when people die. Why? They outlive the term. If people are living longer, it might only be 1%. And we did research on that. We found out that 98% of the beneficiaries liked it better when the death benefit was enforced when the person died. They thought it was pretty keen. But you know, ladies and gentlemen, this longevity thing is a great pivot for our business. It is no longer the idea of die too soon. Now it's live too long. And it's all supported by the new demographics. And what are the new demographics? The baby boomers in this country, for example, are no longer 30 years of age and masters of the universe. They're in their 50s, and they're dealing with the longevity risk of their parents and the potential of what might happen to them. And how are people dealing with this longevity risk? There was a great joke in Business Week. It's one of those cartoons, you know, and the husband's looking at his wife and says, honey, if we take a late retirement and an early death, we'll just squeak by. Now that's the funny part. Let me tell you the tragic part. Enron. This was a woman who worked for a company in this country that went out of business. And with the bankruptcy of the business came the bankruptcy of her retirement account. This woman just didn't lose her retirement account. She lost her independence and her dignity. And the shame of it might drive her to potentially get sick. And if so, you know who will take care of her? Members of her family. More particularly, the women in that family would have to take care of her. So as people live longer, they run the risk of a financial calamity or just running out of money. The other risk that people take is health risks, such as the diseases of the aged. Ronald Reagan, the former president of the United States, passed away last week, almost 10 years from the time he announced that he had Alzheimer's. While that's a tragedy, my heart goes out to Nancy Reagan, who coined the phrase that Alzheimer's is the long goodbye. I want to show you an excerpt from a video called The Forgetting that was produced by MetLife, which talks about Alzheimer's, but more importantly, zeroes in on the true victims, those people who have to care for people with Alzheimer's. And we dedicate this to Nancy Reagan and to all the Nancy Reagans throughout the world. Play the video.
Every family hit by Alzheimer's faces stress unique to the disease. To help face these pressures, Harry and Gladys each come to their own support groups.
How have things changed in your family?
What bothers me a lot in dealing with this is the stress I feel if I go out and leave him at home. I always call him, and if he doesn't answer the phone, then I drop everything and go back home again.
I just rant and rave. I just keep praying for the strength to accept his personality, because there's a big personality change. There's a lot of times that I really absolutely hate Harold. And it's not even that I hate him, I hate what's happening to him. And then I feel bad about myself because I feel that way about him.
One of the quotes I read in a book, it said, I'm not dying, I'm just disappearing before your very eyes. And I thought, that's what it is. It's like, and when you see that blank look, that's the worst.
Caregivers are really doing the best they can to care for their family member. They do everything right, and the person still gets worse.
There isn't much that we can do as a profession to help the people who are afflicted with Alzheimer's, but let me tell you what we can do. We could make certain that through a product like long-term care, that there could be a care worker in that house so that poor lady in the red dress could go out and get a break. So that she knew that she could at least maintain her own physical health, her mental health, and also her financial wealth. And you know, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that got me to this point in terms of my thought process is a hero of mine who happens to be in this room. I was fortunate enough to listen to an MDRT tape from Dr. Marius Barnard, who is joining us today, and you'll hear from him tomorrow. As you know, he and his brother started the heart transplants down in South Africa. He talked about the 8th heart transplant patient, that's hard, you know. 8th heart transplantation. I said it, you know what I mean, okay. The 8th guy, all right? He lived for 22 years, but he lived in abject poverty, was a double amputee the last 7 years of his life. It was a miserable existence, and as I heard this tape, which I would have not gotten had not the MDRT did it, and I wasn't there, but I envisioned it, that Dr. Barnard probably put his arms up. Here it was, one of the most famous doctors of the world talking to us, and what he said was, don't you understand the limitations of the medical profession? All we can do is extend life. And then I began to think about our business, and ladies and gentlemen, I believe this, and I want to imbue it in you. I believe that the products and services that we create today are as critical as heart-lung machines, because they just don't deal with the extension in life, they deal with the quality and dignity of life. And it also got me to think that perhaps with the products or services that I could create or motivate people to do, that through you, see, because you deal with the public, I don't, that through you, people like me and all of the home offices around the world, that your efforts allow us to live a life of significance, and I want to thank you for that. I saw a very disturbing article not too long ago. It was in the headlines of the Wall Street Journal. It said, how to protect yourself from your parents. I couldn't believe it. It was a legitimate article, and I wondered about it, you see, ladies and gentlemen, because in my life, my mother was in a hospital bed in an apartment with 2 kids in Manhattan. And at one time, I thought I was the only person who was dealing with this until I saw an AARP study. AARP did a study and asked people who are over 46 years of age, what's the number one or the biggest thing that happened to you in the last 5 years? Number 1 was taking care of a parent. Number 2 was the kid moved out. Number 3 was the kid moved back in. You can't make that up. But after I took care of my mother, I vowed that my children would never have to go through what my wife and I had to go through taking care of my mother. And so I went out and I bought long-term care. And ladies and gentlemen, 50-year-olds will buy long-term care. Look, 49% of people who are over 50 have some kind of ailments. Look at me, I'm the poster child. In the past 28 months, I've had my knee operated on both shoulders, a herniated disc out of my neck, and new teeth. That's because I still play rugby. I'm trying to rethink that. I'll tell you a quick story, though. My friends called me up after my knee was operated on. They said, Joe, you got to play in this game. I said, I can't. It's too early. I can't do it. They said, Joe, the name of the team is Commoners and Lords. This is sitting members of the British House of Parliament, and you can't deny an Irishman the ability to hit an MP without impunity. It's a joke. That's not my politics. I just wanted to go through that. Ladies and gentlemen, don't you realize that all of the products that we have designed here are there for the purposes of making certain that people maintain their independence and their dignity, and not to wind up like this. Play the video, please.
I know what's going on here. I wish you'd just say it. You don't really want me to live with you. Your house really is too small. I'm sure the money's tight. Besides, I'm his mother, not yours. You probably think this isn't your responsibility. Yes, I can see it on your face. You wish someone else was stuck with me. That would be more convenient for you, wouldn't it?
People often imagine the worst when you don't tell them you really care. Talk to the ones you love.
When I saw that tape, I had to get it because it began to make me think about this great business that we're in. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine if one of you, a person of significance, met this elderly woman 25 years ago. She might have to say, I have to move in with you, but wouldn't it be nice if she could say, I know I have to move in, but isn't it nice that I bought you a big house so that all 3 kids have their own room? And isn't it nice that I guaranteed their tuition so that their college education is taken care of? And isn't it nice that there's a part of the house where I can have my privacy and dignity and be surrounded by the people I love? And you know what, ladies and gentlemen? You have the ability to do that for people. It's the idea of legacy, and everyone wants it. Legacy is the highest accomplishment in the human condition. And I want you to listen very carefully to something I'm about to tell you. I think this sums up what you do for a living. It's the famous philosopher Reinhold Niemeyer who says this, and listen, nothing that we do that's worthwhile can be fully accomplished in one lifetime. Therefore, we must be saved by hope. Nothing that is real, true, or beautiful can be fully comprehended in the context of current history. Therefore, we must be saved by faith. And finally, nothing we do, no matter how noble, can be accomplished alone. Therefore, we must be saved by love. Hope, faith, and love is what you embody. And I don't think that you ever realize the number of people or the families that will stay intact, the children that will be educated, the businesses that will go on. Even when you die, people will begin and continue to deliver death claims that you've generated. And tell me that that's not a life of significance. And in closing, I want to end on a personal note. The other reason why that videotape got to me was because it reminded me of my mother. You remember I said that I bought long-term care because I didn't want my wife Geraldine and myself to be a burden to our children. But you know what? I never saw it from my mother's perspective. And that's what that video brought out. And I'll always be sorry for perhaps the times we weren't too charitable with her, just to break some of the tension. But you know, I'd like to show you my mom now. I'd like to put her on the screen. There's another part to my mother's story. Those are my 2 sisters, and not long after it, my brother came, and then I came. And when I was 6 months old, my very successful attorney father died without life insurance. And my mother then had to go out and work as a secretary to raise all of us. She had to make some very hard decisions. You see those girls? None of them went to college at the appropriate time, even though one got a full scholarship, because the girls had to work to make sure that the boys could get through school. How do you like that little sibling dynamic? Well, she worked hard. She got us through. I graduated, and then she got sick. And then after she got sick, she began to see that she would become dependent. And as my mother would say it is, I would be inconvenient. And so she willed herself to die. And that's why she's not here to see her son on the main platform of the $1 Million Roundtable. And you know what? I don't think that people deserve to go out like that. And I want to know, where was the person of significance, the advocate who could have taken my father, even pushed him up against the wall and said, don't you understand you have to have life insurance because I'm advocating for your wife, because if you're gone, life could be miserable. Where was the advocate who advocated for my sisters who were denied a college education at the appropriate time? And where was the advocate even for my father, whose youngest son stands in front of you now? And the only legacy I can tell you my father left us was he left us alone. You have to understand what your sacred trust is. You have to overcome your call reluctance. It has to come from the heart to go out and find people like the elderly woman or my mother. because you have to protect them. You have to help people ask the questions they cannot ask unaided with you, which is, what would happen if I'm not here to be around to take care of my family? And finally, you have permission to be confrontational with people because you're dealing with their most precious asset, their children and their legacy. And if someone is disrespectful of you or treats you like a used car salesman or says you're a pushy salesman, do you know what you tell them? What I do for a living is I protect the innocent when someone dies prematurely. I provide a worry-free retirement that people can't outlive. I protect their assets when they get sick, and I provide legacy when they die, because I, meaning you, live a life of significance. Thank you.